Yeah, I mean, look, he's 61 years old at this point. Mm-hmm. So unless it's a time served in a probation, he's probably going to be doing life in prison. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You get 10 years, 20 years, maybe even 5 years. You're in prison. You're in poor health. I think he had cancer at one point. May or may not be in remission. I'm not sure. Yeah. It's an ugly situation. But he could also say, I made all this up. I was facing life in prison, so I made up all the story, and I needed money, and Vlad TV was paying, as well as the other platforms were paying.
We're going to see. You know, the other part of the fame thing is whoever represents him. Because
well, yeah. Well,
it's ego against ego against ego.
Yeah.
And so maybe the person that's representing him, you know, they're going to, with their ego at you know, front and center, they're going to do what they can.
Well, you know what actually is interesting also about this case? Well, number one, Suge Knight, who now has a podcast from prison.
That's interesting.
Called Collect Calls with Suge Knight. Yeah. He said that Orlando wasn't the shooter. I spoke to someone who was in the car behind Tupac, and they said that the arm they saw sticking out the window with a gun was a big, beefy arm. It wasn't a skinny arm.
And all of that is dependent on somebody named they.
They, exactly.
That's a trip because that one they said that shit.
Well, it was a they that I personally know that was in the car. I'm trying to remember whether he said it on camera. This is why I'm not saying the name.
Yeah, but they's a big-ass word to a lot of people.
Okay, I got it.
You know what I mean?
But there was a guy who was part of the Southside Crips named Dirt Rock, who was part of the grand jury. Mm-hmm. And what he said, that he was actually roommates with this guy, Big Dre, who's this big heavyset guy that was in the car. That was established. And he said to the grand jury that actually Dre told him that he was the shooter. But because he didn't want all the heat of being Tupac's murderer, as well as it made more sense for Orlando to basically be the one to do it because he's the one who got jumped and his rep would have been tarnished by letting a rapper jump on him and not retaliate.
So Keefe D would implicate his nephew and not this they? Why would he do that?
Well, Big Dre. I believe Dre may have been alive at that time.
Yeah, but why would Keefe D not mention that guy?
Because I believe at that time Big Dre was alive, and I think Orlando definitely was dead by that time.
Oh.
Because I don't know if you know the story, but Orlando got killed a few years later over basically a drug deal gone bad.
Yeah.
Oh, some owed money over a drug deal that turned into a triple homicide in the middle of
if that movie happened, would be very interesting. That way that Orlando Anderson and Tupac both ended up being that, you know.
Yeah. And they both said, fuck the police.
Yeah, exactly.
In their final words.
Yeah, they had drastically different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Orlando was the gangster in this story. And, yeah. It's a whole ugly situation, man. Listen, I personally, I wouldn't feel any sort of happiness if Keefe D got convicted. I personally hope that they actually let him out. You know, and because he's an old man at this point. You know what I'm saying? The story's out there. The reason I did the interview is because I just wanted to get the real story. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to, you know, as being a real big Tupac fan, I got tired of hearing the conspiracies. Oh, the government did it. Tupac's still alive in Cuba. Oh, Suge had him killed. You know what I mean? Like, just all this ridiculousness. You know, I was like, okay, I want the real story out there with the last, you know, and this is an old man I'm talking to, realizing that, I mean, he could pass away tomorrow and the story will just die completely. Let me get this story down on tape so future generations, because listen, Tupac is still a huge artist.
Isn't that something?
Isn't that something?
Yeah, I mean, he tapped the vein, man. It's you know, even when you even speak about it in the same way I spoke about it, it's like people get so pissed off. You know, it's like it's a dumb. You know, there's one thing about social media: you could be the dumbest bastard on the planet and people gonna listen to you. Like, it's just some of the dumbest shit.